that we fight for each night. I'm a constitutionalist through and through, proud of this nation, the home of the true. Values that bind us from sea to shining sea, family, faith, and the land of the free. Hearts full of grit with a spirit that's real.
Well, good morning, folks. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist. Going to have a little different show than planned. I had a last-minute cancellation, but soon I will have Herb Morgan on for controller. Instead, I'm going to bounce around a little bit with national headlines, talk about the loss of sanity in the Democratic Party. I know there's nothing new there, but it seems to be that AOC is rising as their potential leader, and Gavin Newsom's falling. I don't know how to feel about that. I'm a little torn. It's like, I don't want to ever see Gavin succeed because, you know, frankly, if his hands start moving, it is a distraction from the lie he's going to tell you. Because as soon as his mouth's moving, there's going to be something that is at best a twisted portion of the truth. At worst, an outright lie. We've also got some culture war stuff going on. We've got a potential governor's race going on between, do I say his name right or do I say it like Biden? Biden called him Xavier Becerra. I think it's actually Xavier Becerra. And he's running against Steve Hilton. And there's some things that are developing in this race that I think you need to know about. Anyway, starting with Xavier. He gave Gavin an A for effort. And he did not want to actually look at what's happening in California and do anything worse. Finally, when he was badgered enough during a debate, he gave Gavin a C-, but, you know, he said it as quietly and as little as he could because, you know, he's the new king and Gavin's the old king, and he just didn't want to upset the old king. So Lord Gavin, interestingly enough, has not endorsed in this race, so it might be possible that Lord Gavin will be voting for Steve Hilton. You never know. But that's crazy that Xavier, who's not really done very much, hasn't written things for California, hasn't written bills. He was mostly a politician for California, worked also in the Biden administration, was in charge of Health and Human Services, and dealt with immigrant kids that came over the border without parents. And he handed those kids over to unvetted parents with no safety checks. And notice I said parents, but huge quotation marks. Gavin-size quotation marks. You know, with a big hand gesture. They didn't vet those people that they let take the kids. And now, there were a few 100,000 of those kids. 85,000 of them still can't be accounted for. Some of them have been found and were parts of human trafficking. And Xavier decided that, you know, it needed to be more like an assembly line, and he talked about Henry Ford and how it needed to be done more efficiently. Rather than, if we're all about immigrants, and I'm for legal immigrants, the left is for illegal immigrants, why were we not protecting the kids? Come on, from the left, the children. We have to do it for the children. And yet, some of those kids went to human trafficking. Again, 85,000 kids that came across the border without a parent were handed over to somebody, hopefully mostly good, because I don't wish ill on kids no matter what. They're not responsible. And Xavier runs from this. I've got a video of some friends of mine, Latino Free Minds, Daniel Reyes, Gio Ramirez. They're big on Instagram. These are good guys. And I'm going to play a little clip for them. They also happen to be local guys living right in my local neighborhood. So shout out, and we're going to play something that they played on Instagram.
Okay.
And we start with Xavier running from questions.
Let's do it again. Here we go.
Okay, we'll try that again.
Secretary, your challenger, Steve Hilton, has challenged you to a series of debates. Can we just get your reaction to the challenge? Will you be accepting, Secretary?
We'll
we'll be doing a debate.
Yeah, we'll be doing lots of debates as a.
How many debates?
So you're accepting the challenge by your opponent?
Secretary, on Proposition 39, can you just quickly expand on why you said it's an attempt to interfere on the vote? Secretary?
This was only a few
The
minutes.
optics are not good when any candidate or anyone runs away from a reporter.
It was only a few minutes. He was only questioned for a few minutes, and when he didn't like the questions, Xavier showed his leadership by running. So, apparently he's going to lead California by running. It's a different approach, but I think that's what I'm sure that's what I just saw. Let's go ahead and continue that.
It's not as far as it's going.
Well, bummer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's...
Well, we're going to watch him run one more time. See how fast he's moving? He is purposely ignoring everything. He cut a press conference
The optics are
short.
not good when any candidate or anyone runs away from a reporter.
Yeah, as far as it goes.
Well, okay. I guess I'm not going to get to show Daniel talking about this and how he had some very real points. This is Latino Free Minds when I'm saying Daniel. His real point was that we keep doing the same thing. The reason that we get politicians that feel like they can run away from questions or that they don't have to debate. Jim Costa would be another one. He doesn't feel he has to debate, and I will have his opponent on next week. Kyle Kirkland, that's Congressional District 20, is because they believe they've got it all sewn up. Even without the cheating factor, and frankly, I think we've got an exceedingly vulnerable voting system by having vote by mail and no voter ID. They feel like they can just count on you. California is kind of, in some ways, the definition of insanity. A lot of things aren't working. The rich keep getting richer. I will agree. I want to point out that Lord Newsom just bought a second mansion on a governor's salary. An $11 million mansion. So, yes, Governor Newsom talks about this being progressive, but the rich keep getting richer. And a lot of the mega rich, they're bailing on California. We've lost billions of dollars worth of tax dollars because of the incompetence of Gavin Newsom. Now let's bring that back to Xavier Becerra. He gave Gavin an A for effort. I give Gavin a D. As in, your policies are just dumb. It's just bad. Why? And there's a why to that. The why is, let's see.
Not right down the curve there? No curve?
No curve. 24 billion, old numbers, spent on homeless to get more homeless. We've got hundreds of illegal operations for hospice-type care in Southern California alone, right in the LA basin. Rather than address that, because we got a situation much like Minnesota, where there's a huge amount of fraud, our Attorney General has gone in and he's prosecuted just a handful of people and says, oh, yeah, nothing to see here. And when a private journalist came into California, Nick Shirley, and they named an act after Nick Shirley, they decided the right thing to do was make it illegal, essentially, for independent journalists to come in, or frankly, journalists, and make videos that expose fraud. What you hiding? Look, all of this should be transparent. The guy running for controller, the guy that I hope to have on soon, the guy that was supposed to be on today, and Herb, I want you back because you got some great ideas. He set up a system using AI where all of it gets put up in a transparent way so we can see everything this government's doing and everybody can look at it in real time. And you can't hide anything, so that then people could look in and ask questions. But in California, that's not what they want to have happen. You realize that a Freedom of Information Act, a FOIA, to the state of California, they just passed a law that it'll be now $66 an hour for you to get a Freedom of Information Act request through. So that means for every hour it takes for the state to process that, they're going to charge you $66.
Huh.
Only state that does that. It's not like it's a nominal fee. That's a pretty big fee. So if somebody without much money wanted to know what was going on, they couldn't afford to. You think that's an accident, folks? California has something to hide. Gavin Newsom has something to hide. And he doesn't want to deal with California's problems. He wants to talk about we're the 5th largest economy. Yeah, we've also got the greatest gap between rich and poor. And you would be part of that rich elite. Hard to take you seriously. We've also got the highest poverty rate. Isn't that crazy? Richest economy. Our economy is the 5th largest, as if we were a country in the world. And yet we have the highest poverty rate, the highest percentage of homeless, the highest actual number of homeless. What's going on? Oh, highest cost of living, highest taxes, highest energy cost. Somebody's suffering with all that ridiculousness. If you look at where people are fleeing, this should tell you something. Where people can't afford it and they want a better life. Because whether you're on the right or the left, generally, you want your streets to be safe. You want a good education. California ranging for K through 12 somewhere in the 40s. 40th worst, not best. So you want safety, a good education, a reasonable cost of living, where you can afford a house. California has one of the lowest homeowner rates of any state because we don't build new houses because of all the environmental regulations, because the government has hidden in all these little extra fees to pay for things, or forcing you to get solar, or, you know, they want an environmental impact report. Even though that whole, say, subdivision has been approved, but you want to make a tiny change and you got to do a whole new environmental impact report. That's the ridiculous of California. That's what Gavin represents, is more government, more intrusion, less freedom, but great hand gestures and really slick hair, because his hair does look good.
I can picture you with that same hair.
You know, I need a Gavin wig. I could go around making big hand gestures and talking like nonsense.
What do you call it? The milk the cow?
Oh, folks, please look this up. I meant to do this at some point. There's an interview that Gavin did where he spends his whole time doing this, milking the cow as he's talking. It's so engendered trust, but it's funny enough to look up. Just put in Gavin milking the cow.
Yeah, he has a lot of dance movements, it looks like.
Yeah, well, Gavin's, strangely enough, not my favorite person, and yet he might not be anywhere near as dumb as the new favored child, the one that's ascending, the magnificent AOC, who's suddenly not woke.
The anointed.
Now, let's think about that. AOC personified woke for how long?
Yeah, she's trying to pivot in the middle.
She's trying to pivot because now she thinks she might be president. And the part I love the best is Gavin's not number one anymore. He was in the 40s on Polymarket recently, like 40% chance that he would be the Democratic nominee for president. And now he's at 17%. Harris, in most places, has far surpassed him. You know, word salad is doing better than Gavin.
Wow. Yeah.
And AOC is rising and might just eclipse both of them. What if we got AOC and Harris? I mean, there's a Dumb and Dumber moment. Can you imagine the speech between the two of them?
You would think Newsom was way more polished. When I say polished, he's been running for so long, he has not worked out the issues that people have issues with. He can't lie his way out of it anymore. People see through it?
I hope so. But I want to point out that he spent an awful lot of time lately campaigning outside of the state for what he calls other candidates, trying to build his name recognition out of California. Let's hope Gavin just crashes and burns. I don't want him to die, but it would be, I think, a blessing if he was struck mute. And all he had to communicate was, he could type something or hand gestures. And people would realize if he wasn't able to use his silver tongue to lie his way through things, that he's just a fraud.
I can't believe he bought another mansion, you said?
Yeah, he bought a second mansion.
Thought I heard something about that. It was
$11 million mansion on a governor's salary.
Over 5,000 square feet or something like that. I don't know. It's huge.
Yeah. My property would fit inside that 5,000 square foot mansion, just about. And I don't have a huge property, but I have a 1,350 square foot house and a not big yard. So I'm thinking, including my driveway, my garage, I think it all fit right inside that mansion.
Mm. And that's not the only one.
No, that's his second mansion.
Vacation home, I guess.
Yeah, I'm going to pivot away from Newsom because, my stomach was starting to feel a little upset. And that's kind of how I feel about Newsom. I don't consider him a good man at all. Pathological liar. So moving on. We've got something else crazy. Woke hasn't been defeated. It's suffered some setbacks. But there's this new alliance led on one side by the DSA, almost an unholy alliance between the woke communist socialists, LGBTQ, and the Islamists. Well, the Islamists want an authoritarian world. They want Sharia law. On the other side, the socialists and communists, well, why? I just realized socialism and communism, why? They're authoritarian at the same time. In neither case is it focused on the liberty of the individual, or liberty is defined by the individual. That your individual freedoms, well, they wouldn't exist if this unholy alliance succeeds in destroying capitalism. The DSA wants to do some things that should scare you, and they're kind of think of as they're the wing of the Democratic Party that has all the energy. They're sucking up all the air in the room. Yeah. They're the most articulate part of the Democratic Party, and then you've got the establishment. But they want to destroy ICE. No borders. They want to defund the police. And I'm not just making this up. If you look at the Democratic Socialist America's platform, you can look it right up. It's all there. Defund the police, no prisons, meaning eliminate all prisons. Bernie Sanders has recently distanced himself from this because, Bernie's got to protect his 3 mansions and pretend to be a socialist. But, Bernie's got 3 mansions and he's a socialist. Come on. Can we take Bernie Sanders seriously? Going back to that platform of the Democratic Socialist of America. They want open borders. No such thing as a border. They want to own the means of production of all large companies. Why, that's so remarkably similar to the Communist Manifesto. But they're not, don't worry, they're not communists. They're actually just socialists. They want you to vote away your freedom so that they can do things like give you universal health care. They want you to vote away your freedom so they can tax the hell out of the rich. Now, their co-chair was recently in an interview and was asked, what does that mean? What do you mean tax the hell out of the rich? And you know what her answer was? Well, we got to see what our needs are so we know how much we have to take from them. Meaning there's not a limit like, oh, well, we want to get 10% more from the rich. We want to get 40% more. But like, it's not really their money, so we just need to see what our needs are. So that sounds like a communist principle where for those that have the needs and it goes to those that have the wants. Isn't that how that goes? but you have to have such authoritarian power. Now, the problem is that, and the big problem is for the middle class. In every communist system, there's not one. Everybody gets pushed down except the ruling elite, and they're magically, somehow, much like in California where Lord Newsom's doing well, everywhere you go, there's still rich people. So what's this unholy alliance going to do? Well, if the DSA wins that unholy alliance, again, they're going to remake the presidency. They've flat out said they're going to remake the presidency. They're going to stack the Supreme Court until they get enough people on there that it'll do what it wants. They want to eliminate the Senate. Wow. So, and they want no part of capitalism. So they're not about preserving or seeing anything good about this country. They're about remaking this country. Where the right has to be careful is too many young people are buying into this. We need to go out. We need to have outreach. We need to talk to them and make them realize that doesn't work. And it doesn't work because if you're not proud of your country, you don't defend it. They're not proud of our country. They want to rip it down from the foundation. They see everything as bad, as, you know, they can get anything they want from a supermarket. They can use Amazon to get anything within a day, pretty much anything anybody could need in most places in the lower 48, maybe not Alaska or Hawaii, but in the lower 48, you can get pretty much anything you want or could need within a day from Amazon, and they're not the only game in town. You could go to a store and buy just about anything you need within an hour or two. Yes, capitalism has flaws when we allow for monopolies. Capitalism has flaws when the companies cut deals with politicians and the politicians are corrupt. But those are separate issues. This country and the idea of individual freedom means you or I or anybody else could pick out what they wanted to do for their living. If they were good at it and they were successful and they worked hard, they could take that and turn it into a business, an idea. Heck, we're so prosperous that people can go to school and get a degree in something like ethnic studies. We have so much money to waste. You can do something like that. Because I'm not saying learning those issues is necessarily bad. I'm saying, what is the economic value? Well, we've got this DSA fallacy that they're telling us, well, they're doing it for the working man. Well, there's been some surveys. Roughly 40% of the people that support the Democratic Socialists of America are poor. And 60% of them are almost always white. They're highly educated. They're the college people that are the malcontents that have bought into the idea that, well, you know, for the collective. Well, I see those people as kind of useful idiots. They're going to be used by the stronger force, in this case, because of the unholy alliance between the Islamists and these fools. They're going to be eliminated. Now, why would I come to that conclusion? What happened in Venezuela when the socialists, semi-communists took over? Well, they used the useful idiots, you know, the educated ones, and the college students to have an overthrow of the government. And then as soon as they were overthrown, the stronger force, the authoritarians, moved in, like Hugo Chavez, and then followed by, is it Maduro? I think it's followed by Maduro. Or I might have which leader came first in Venezuela mixed up, but you could go to that same model and look at what happened in China. Mao Zedong. We're going to go with Mao.
That's pretty good there. You got it.
Yeah. Mao took over, and he was a clerk at a college. And he didn't like the fact that, he was making a whole lot less than the president of the college. So he started a revolution. And they used college students. And then what happened to all of that? Why, those college students then didn't get to go do what they wanted. They got sent out to the fields to work on farms, even though they had 4-year degrees. At least the ones that were quiet. The ones that weren't quiet disappeared and died. Communism is responsible for killing off more people than Hitler by multiple times. By the way, Hitler was, again, an authoritarian. A lot of my friends on the left will say, oh, well, he was on the right. Is that why they called it the socialist? There's a socialist word right there if you look up Nazi. National Socialist. Yeah, that's it. Huh. Yet they believe that, fascism is bad. I agree with them. I just don't think they can define what it is. The Babylon Bee does this great satirical video of a woke leftist going back to kill Hitler. And it is funny. And this woman goes back with a gun and she's going to kill Hitler. They've created a time machine. And then they have a conversation. And, Hitler says, well, we need to take care of some people. And the gal's like, well, yeah, we need to deal with some people. And then Hitler says, yeah, like the Jews. And then the woman who's going to murder goes back in time, says, yeah, like the Jews. And then she realizes that a lot of what that unholy alliance has created is moving towards fascism. It's moving towards control. They want to talk about how they're open and diverse, but if you have any thought that doesn't agree with them, what happens? You need to be canceled, destroyed, labeled as evil, called bigot, racist, homophobe, sexist, Nazi. I'm sure there's others. There's no such thing as true debate, and that's kind of scary. I'm going to end on a little more fun note because I think I might have been complaining just a wee bit today. And I like to be more positive than that. Doesn't always work out for me. Something fun happened in the culture wars. For me, this is exciting. Because we don't win every culture war, but I think we're going to win this one. We've had this ongoing debate whether men should be in women's supports. And the WNBA, a lot of the coaches, the players are like, oh yeah, we're for trans athletes. We want them there. And we had major movement along these lines. Thank you to Ernest Cantor. He's Turkish. He's won I believe a Nobel Prize for freedom for fighting for.
Wow.
And he's from Turkey, fighting for freedom for people. Yeah. And he's decided that one of the new areas where we need freedom is the WNBA. He's a former center. He's like 6'10". He was a pretty darn good player, not a superstar, but a really solid player. And, well, I'll let him explain in his own words. I'm not sure we're going to make it all the way through because Instagram seems to not like us to play something for very long, but that's all right.
After careful consideration and reviewing the current eligibility guidelines, I am officially declaring myself a WNBA prospect. If simply declaring who you are is all that's required, then I meet every single requirement necessary to compete in the WNBA. My team and I have carefully examined the WNBA's eligibility criteria and governing framework surrounding self-identification and inclusion. Based on the current guidelines, I can and am officially declaring my eligibility for the upcoming WNBA draft in May 2027. I am definitely not here to mock, make fun of, or disrespect any community or personal choices. I am simply asking that the current rules be applied equally to everyone. The rules that represent the very values many WNBA players and coaches have publicly advocated for. My team and I are prepared to ensure these guidelines are applied equally, consistently, and without exception. And I look forward to the WNBA honoring its stated principles. See you.
So did you hear that, folks? Now, how well is that going to go for the women in the WNBA? Because he would be tied for the tallest player. And as long as he pretends. I mean, you can change whatever gender you want whenever you want, right? Isn't that how that goes?
Huh. He's that tall, huh?
He's that tall.
He's going to be the bearded lady.
He'll be the bearded lady. And according to their rules, he's eligible because there's not an age limit and you can identify however you want. And they keep screaming that I have no problem with a trans player. Well, look what happened in women's sports. Leah Thomas was about the 200th best swimmer in all of college men's swimming. 200th.
Yeah.
Not the number one, the 200th. He moved over, she, we did a little dance there and switched some things around without even removing the boys. No surgery. And became the number one swimmer in women's sports. And there's no contact in swimming in theory.
Yeah.
There's contact in basketball. Now, what's going to happen when a guy who has denser bone structure, more muscle mass, higher percentage of muscle, lower percentage of water, is stronger, normally is bigger, now plays with women? Somebody's going to get hurt, right?
Yeah.
This is about just fairness, and I think a lot of the reason why the woke people take on these ridiculous positions is because it's like they want to tear down society. They've decided that this is such a bad country that they need to tear down to society, and it's pretty easy because there's no it's only subjective truth. There is no like, this is the truth. It's my truth. Well, this is how I feel, and today, you know, I feel like a unicorn, and tomorrow I might define myself some other way. I think a lot of this also has to do with the fact that if there's no objective truth and they have no foundation in God, then there's no higher authority. There's no place where morality comes from. It's like we make it up with as we go along with how we feel. I think also that the hardcore left is about the end justifies the means. They so define somebody as terrible, and if you have no moral foundation of what's right and wrong, and you believe this is a terrible country from its founding, rather than a flawed country like every country that has slowly moved towards the idea of individuals all being equal and all of us having liberty, which was not perfectly executed to start off with, but slowly has gotten better.
Yeah.
Then they're willing to do whatever it takes.
Yeah, we have satire, and that's what's kind of, we have fun with this topic, but they take it so extreme. Imagine this is a 6'10". He's 6'10".
He's 6'10".
250 pound, I guess. And he is highlighting, though, a great point. When you try to debate the issue, they cannot debate it. They really try to argue a feeling, try to argue an equality thing that just doesn't make it fair and right. And they're actually saying it's more fair to do this. It doesn't make sense.
Again, I don't think that matters to them.
Yeah.
If they argue from a place of emotion, then facts don't matter.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of profound. Facts don't matter if all it is feelings. And I'm sorry if facts hurt your feelings. But I think that I do believe that there is a God. I do believe that truth, there's an absolute truth. There might be some stuff where there's gray area, but there's an absolute truth with a whole lot of things.
Yeah.
There's some area where there's also opinion, but I don't know. I'm a little baffled by this, but I think this is the way.
It's ridiculous.
This is the path. By illustrating the absurdity with absurdity. And so thank you to Ernest Cantor for doing that. We need to illustrate the woke's absurdity. I want to point out that woke is beginning to die, or AOC is a hypocrite.
Yeah.
Could go either way, maybe a little of both, but she's backed off from her earlier woke positions because she wants to run for president.
That's where the middle left kind of lost it. The independent media, the Joe Rogan out there, and
Well, Joe Rogan's not a conservative at all.
Yeah, exactly. But the whole women's, men and men's. It's just really he's called things out just as what they are. It doesn't make sense, and people are tired of it. Especially this new generation. I'm happy with it. They're not standing for it.
Well, I sure hope so. You go to way more churches than I do. You have a kind of blessed position where you get to travel around to various churches and meet more of the young people, I think, than I do. So what are they saying?
Very grateful, but here in the Valley, I think I'm not sure how it is outside the Valley, but I know in the Valley I work in a youth group on pretty regularly, and they're saying this is nonsense. They're very conservative, but they don't like the label conservative. It's kind of like weird. Like for us that are older, like, no, we're conservative or Republican or all this and that. But they just, it doesn't make sense. That's stupid. It's like that's very cringy or whatever. I don't know all the words, but they are. I think there's hope. I think you like to talk about hope in the show a lot, and I think we could look at this new generation, and I thank God that there's a generation that has hope versus trying to go by just what's shoved down their throats. And this is the group think of the week. And whatever AOC says, no, you're not the leader. I'm going to go by what my values are, and thank God for great parents.
Well, so just like always, every time there's a real challenge with this nation, people begin to blame the youth and go, oh, well, all is lost. And there's a large percentage of people that do that. And they say, well, it's a lost generation. What you just said kind of illustrates that that's not the case. They're not all lost. And 15% could change the world. Matter of fact, 6% actively participated, 6% of the population actively participated when this country was founded, meaning during the Revolutionary War. That's kind of a crazy number. 6% were active. Other people might have supported it or not supported it, but they weren't active. They didn't put skin in the game actively. 6% were able to change the world, defeat the largest military the world had ever seen in Great Britain, the largest navy the world had ever seen. And we basically, by redefining how we fought, by valuing liberty, particularly religious liberty, they had something to fight for.
Yeah.
They believed that almost it was ordained. They expressed this idea that, well, we have a personal relationship with God. And they wanted to be able to define that. And the King of England, who was also the head of the Church of England, was trying to tell them what to do. And they were like, no. So many people think it was just taxation without representation. Read through the Declaration. Of the 27 different grievances that they listed in the Declaration of Independence, you don't get to taxation till like number 14. All those first ones had to do with being able to define your own destiny, have your own judges, practice religion as you pleased. All of those created a different type of person. I don't think that person's gone. I think that there's an American spirit of kind of rebels, of don't tell me what to do, don't tread on me. And we need to make sure that we talk to youth. We need to make sure that they understand how special this is. Frankly, here's a challenge to parents. Why don't you take them to some country, pretty much most any country, and let them see how people live there. It's not going to all be bad, because there's some good everywhere.
Yeah.
And there's some bad everywhere. But they're going to realize once they traveled how blessed they are. During the World Cup, there were a huge number of Europeans that came over, and they were blown away by crazy stuff like, wait a minute, you get ice with your soda? Wait a minute, you can get refills? Just simple little things like that we take for granted were not available. Or, wow, you live in this house and you're able to afford that car and you've got this prosperity that we only dream about, and yet you're just middle class. They still have rich in a whole lot of Europe, but the average person, they can't really change their class so easily because they don't have the economic freedom to move up or down. In the United States, with capitalism, you can also move down. That kind of upper middle class often jumps up into the millionaire status, but often also moves down depending on, guess what? Their choices, their behavior, sometimes luck. That doesn't happen in the rest of the world. If you grew up in India and you were, let's say your dad was a shoemaker. It's starting to change, but you were going to be a shoemaker. And there were your choices. And here we have this great opportunity. So reaching out to youth, getting them involved, encouraging them. Don't try to tell them how the whole world is. Ask them questions. Get them to think about it, because if they come to those conclusions themselves rather than just being led there, they're going to understand freedom and the special blessings that we have here better than anywhere else. Any final thoughts on youth?
That's a great hope and all that. But you know what? I thank God they're very stubborn on their values and they will stick to it. But one thing I would encourage them, the voting thing, I don't think that they're there yet. I think they want to vote. Like, why? They have the values, but they don't exercise that in the voting. That's just my thought. There's some out there, definitely. I've been in the grassroots, and there's a lot of young people voting. But the ones that should be voting, because there's so many of them, we are losing that vote sometimes, especially here in California.
Well, there are groups like Young Republicans, Turning Point, which, is both a great organization and kind of a tragedy after Charlie died. And then there's been a lot of hiccups since he's passed.
I'm not a fan of it right now, to be honest with you. But
that's fine, but I still think it did a lot of positive
I did great
as well.
things, yeah.
And there's been a lot of hiccups since he passed.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. But getting youth to think about free speech, getting youth to think about their connection to God, getting youth to feel responsible for being part of a civil society, having to make a difference, all of those matter. So here's a great opportunity, and there's untapped potential. If you know a young person, go help them untap that potential. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist. We'll see you next week.
Under the red, white, and blue, I stand
Clear.
my ground with the words of the founders echoing around. Liberty's flame in my veins, burning bright. I hold to the rights that we fight for each night.